Thanks for tuning into this earnings conversation. Despite a loss in the equity investments, driven by an improvement in loss ratio as well as market share gains, ICICI Lombard reported an inline quarter four. Let's talk about the highlights of the quarter, but more importantly, what could the near future hold in store? Mr. Bhargav Dasgupta, MD and CEO of the company, joins us right now on this conversation. Mr. Dasgupta, thanks so much for taking the time out and speaking to us at BloombergQuint. Niraj here.
Thank you for having me, Niraj.
Can you sum up the quarter? I mean, we had about 7 days of a lockdown. What kind of an impact did it have on the core business? Never mind the equity valuation losses that you would have had.
So I mean, obviously, as the market meltdown that we saw, if you look at our investment portfolio, we have a large exposure in the debt side, but equally we have about 10-11% of our exposure on the equity side. On the equity side, we had a sharp correction in prices, and in fact, our mark-to-market position ended the year with about minus 550 crores. Out of which we have our impairment policy. We look at stock-specific, we do a stock-specific analysis, and we look at whether we need to take a diminution in the P&L. So we took a 120 crore hit in the P&L last quarter. But in terms of the outlook, we believe these are good quality investments that we have, and in the long term, we should see the value come back. But the larger question that you asked was in terms of business. If you see for the whole year, we grew, at about a shade more than 10%, about 10.5%. But for the quarter, we grew at only about 2.5%, about 2.9%. This is excluding the crop segment, which is a segment that we didn't get any business last year. So there was a huge impact in terms of business, and we are seeing it even now as we go through this month of April and May.
So just put this into perspective, and then I'll come to individual segments as well, Mr. Dasgupta. We had a 7 day of a lockdown, and I was speaking to one of your peers in the life insurance space who told me back then that the business had come to a grinding halt. I'm guessing for general insurance, it's probably not as much because some of these things happen on autopilot and auto renewal, so on and so forth. What has the experience been of the last 7 days of March? And therefore, if that is any benchmark, would April, May, June show a significant impact of that?
So the impact, Niraj, is felt, segment by segment differently. So if you look at for the general insurance industry, the point is valid that there is a renewal that comes because we don't write long-term policies largely. We write annual policies, and policies get renewed. But if you look at different segments of business, the largest segment of business for the general insurance industry is auto insurance. And if you look at the auto insurance sector, new vehicle sales, as you've seen most OEMs report, is down to zero in the month of April. So new insurance policy sales have basically gone down to nothing. What we are seeing is renewals in the motor segment. And that number is also a bit muted compared to what we normally see in terms of renewal rates, at least for us. I can speak for ourselves. Our sense, talking to our distributors, talking to our customers, is there may be some amount of postponement of renewals that is happening. And once things normalize and lockdown eases, people will come back and renew their policies. So that's number one. On the health side, we are, there are two or three key segments. One is the corporate segment where corporates buy health insurance for their employees. And that segment has been largely protected. So people are obviously buying in health insurance, and that's in fact the demand for that could actually increase as we go along. The second is the retail segment. And the retail segment, there are two types of policies that we sell. One is indemnity policy, which is, the typical Mediclaim policies where we pay for hospitalization, when all the cost of hospitalization. That's one type of policy. The other type of policy is critical illness, disease-specific benefit policies, which largely get sold through distribution partners, banks, as attachments. So the second category has dropped because the disbursements of loans, etc., have also dropped. But on the indemnity side, the demand is, reasonably stable. People are renewing. Obviously, there's a lot of health concern at this point in time. People are renewing, and the inquiries have increased. What is not happening is the rate of conversion of these inquiries have dropped. Again, probably because people want to do it, but maybe, delaying the decision. So those are the two segments on the retail side, two key segments on the retail side. On the B2B side, that is corporates who buy insurance for, fire damage, project insurance, marine, all of that is as of now largely protected. But we are seeing some stress in the corporate sector in terms of working capital stress, and there are some requests for installments. There are some proposals for reducing the coverage. But as of now, the B2B segment is still fine.
Okay, so I have two questions. One is on the slightly long term, and one is the immediate term. I was speaking to Policy Bazaar, and they mentioned that some of their customers are allowing the motor insurance to lapse for a bit, because they are not going to take out their cars for the foreseeable future or two-wheelers, and therefore once they do that, they'll come back. So my question is, even if this auto insurance, as you said, for you has been a bit muted too, do you reckon it's not demand foregone but demand postponed, and therefore will come back, if not in May, then in June, if not in June, then in July?
Yeah, the demand will come back. As I said, people, a certain percentage of people are postponing the renewals for the same reason that you articulated. But obviously, you need an insurance to drive your vehicle, so the demand will come back.
Okay. The other bit is, sir, when life insurance companies at least say that this might actually have a bit of a long-term positive impact on insurance, just simply because people will be aware that they need to insure everything under the sun right now, because this makes people aware of how the mortality can be any time. So would you reckon that the quantum of insurance that people take, not just in life but in general insurance as well, could actually move up in some fashion? Health insurance, for example, could that all move up?
Yeah, so if you see, examples in the past, if you see what happened post-SARS in Hong Kong, or even if what you're seeing in China right now, where things seems to be stabilizing a lot more, we've seen significant increase in health insurance, interest in health insurance and health insurance premium. And what my colleagues from the life insurance industry would have told you is true for any type of protection. When events like this happen, I think the realization that you need to protect yourself or protect your assets increases, and that's why the penetration increases for some time. So in the long term, we believe, look, at the end of the day, this is not a time when we talk about what we gain from it. It's an unfortunate development. But having said that, in the long term, this definitely will have a positive impact in terms of demand for any type of protection.
Mr. Dasgupta, I won't take too much of your time, but just one question, because a lot of the things are moving and imponderable, so I won't dwell too much on the near-term ROEs and the growth, etc. A lot of people are penciling in various kinds of growth estimates. I won't get into that because I'm guessing it's difficult to pencil in. Yeah. But just want to understand from you one thing. Would you reckon that for any player, and including you, who is amongst the largest players in the country, growth in FY21 would be a large factor of how quickly the auto space bounces back? And if it doesn't, is growth under cloud?
So auto has tremendous impact on the overall economy, right? In terms of the number of linked industries that it supports, the jobs that it supports, the number of dealerships and the employer base in the dealerships. We keep talking to our channel partners, our dealer partners, etc. I think there is tremendous stress. In terms of predicting what will happen, honestly, as you rightly said, it needs a brave heart to predict anything at this point in time, because you don't know how this virus will pan out, and when we will see some of the orange zones become green zones, when the red zones will become orange zones. It's almost impossible to predict as we sit here. And the second imponderable is the fiscal support that is provided to the auto sector. One of the things that I would definitely urge the government to consider would be a vehicle scrappage policy whenever they are able to come out with the package. A cash for clunker kind of a scheme for maybe a 6-month period would go a long way in helping the auto industry. And if the auto industry gets helped, I think the overall economy also benefits. I'm completely aware of the concerns and the constraints that we have in terms of our fiscal space, but that would be an important, important support for the benefit of the larger ecosystem. So if all of these things happen, the numbers can, come up in the second half. There is also a debate that, or a thought that given the concern about using public transport, people may want to, increase their choice in terms of personal mobility, and that could increase demand for the lower end of the vehicles, maybe two-wheelers or lower end cars. So these are all possibilities. It's very difficult to predict what will actually happen and how customers will behave when things normalize.
Mr. Dasgupta, appreciate you taking the time out and being so candid, and I wish you all the best for the times ahead. Please stay safe.
Thank you so much, Niraj.
Right, and that's ICICI Lombard on how the quarter went by. Difficult to give estimates of how the year would be, but I think he tried his best to give us as candid a picture as possible. Viewers, thanks for tuning in to this broadcast.